I recently started watching this show called Beyond the Bar on Netflix. Why? Because I'm a sucker for legal dramas. Courtrooms, lawyers talking crap with fancy words, judges side-eyeing everybody like disappointed parents. I eat that up. I love K-dramas like this. I love J-dramas like 99.9% Criminal Lawyer, which, as an aside, if anybody can hook me up with the movie, much love. I love Ace Attorney. I love Suits. I love, well, the whole genre. And given that I write a crime story, I figured maybe I should put some thought into this in case I ever need to make one. So, I broke it down per usual. Because that's what I do when I binge watch things. And here's my thoughts and findings in 4 parts. Part 1. Rethinking the law drama. Alright, so here's the thing. Law dramas aren't really about the law. Not deep down. That's just the setting, the backdrop, the playground where the real game plays out. At their core, law dramas are about the pursuit of justice, or the total breakdown of it. They're stories about systems, and more importantly, stories about people stuck inside those systems. Some are trying to uphold the rules, some are bending them, others are being crushed by them, and the tension comes from watching who rises, who breaks, and who's forced to make choices they didn't want to make in the first place. Because let's be honest, if the law always worked, if justice always prevailed, if the good guy always won and the bad guy always went to jail, we wouldn't need these stories. We'd all be watching cooking shows and sleeping better at night. But that's not how life works, and law dramas remind us of that. So, what are we really watching when we binge legal thrillers? We're watching 5 core conflicts get played out over and over in different flavors. 1. Justice versus injustice. The obvious one. Someone's wronged, someone's fighting back. The stakes might be life sentence or a parking fine, but the emotional core is always the same. Was the outcome fair? Law dramas are built on that question. And most of the time, the answer is maybe not, but keep watching. 2. System versus individual. This is where the real drama lives. You've got this massive, complicated, slow-moving machine, the legal system. And you've got this person, flawed, scared, idealistic, manipulative, whatever, trying to make something happen within that system. Sometimes they're using the machine. Sometimes they're stuck in its gears. But either way, the tension is, can one person make a difference, or will the system win? 3. Truth versus lies. Law dramas are truth dramas in disguise. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Facts don't win cases. Narratives do. You can have all the evidence in the world and still lose if the other side tells a better story. That's why legal drama characters obsess over controlling the narrative. Every email, every witness, every piece of evidence is a weapon or a weakness. What you believe is more important than what's real. And that's the terrifying beauty of the genre. 4. Power versus powerlessness. Whether it's a broke defendant up against a billion-dollar corporation, or a public defender fighting a stacked DA's office, law dramas always tap into the imbalance. Someone has more resources, more influence, more friends in high places. The underdog has to outthink, outmaneuver, or survive long enough to be heard. And sometimes they don't. But the tension keeps us watching. Will the powerless rise, or will the powerful bury them? 5. Morality versus legality. The crown jewel. What's right and what's legal aren't always the same. Law dramas thrive in that gray zone. A guilty man walks free on a technicality. A woman breaks the law to protect her child. A whistleblower gets punished for telling the truth. And suddenly you're asking yourself, did they do the wrong thing for the right reason? That's when the genre hits hardest, when it messes with your moral compass and tells you to find north again. So yeah, law dramas are about lawyers and judges and procedures on the surface, but underneath, they're about human struggle inside rigged systems. They're about what happens when rules fail, when truth bends, and when people try to claw back justice with nothing but their voice and a closing argument. That's what keeps us watching. That's what keeps us caring. Because deep down, we all want to believe that truth matters, and that sometimes, just sometimes, little guy can win. Part 2. What you need for a law drama to work. So now that we know why law dramas exist, to show the messy, emotional tug-of-war between justice and everything that gets in the way, let's talk about what actually needs to be in one. Not just what you think needs, what you really need. Because here's the trap. Most people think law dramas are about courtrooms, gavels, dramatic pauses, and yelling, "I move to dismiss," like it means something. And sure, those can be fun, but they're not essential. If you're building a law drama from scratch, or trying to understand why one works, you've got to boil it down to 5 key ingredients. Without these, you're just playing dress up with legal jargon. So here, let's break it down. 1. A legal framework. This is your rulebook. You need some kind of system that decides what's right, what's wrong, and what the consequences are. It doesn't have to be the US legal system. It could be a tribal council with ancient customs, corporate policy at a cutthroat startup, space law enforced by androids, even the made-up moral code in a fantasy kingdom. Point is, people need to be held accountable to something. Otherwise, you've just got arguments without structure. That's Twitter, not drama. 2. A moral conflict. Now that you have rules, break them. Or better yet, question them. At the heart of every good law drama is the tension between what's legal and what's right. The audience isn't just asking, did they win the case? They're asking, was that outcome just? Did the system fail? Would I have done the same thing in their shoes? And once they're asking that, you've got them hooked. 3. A catalyst case, aka the thing that starts the fire. There's got to be something that kicks everything into motion. A case, an accusation, a contract dispute, a public scandal, whatever it is, it forces the legal framework to activate. Think of it like pressing start on the pressure cooker. Now people are forced to take sides, dig up truth, bury secrets, and argue like their lives depend on it. Because in a good law drama, they usually do. 4. A battleground for persuasion. Here's something people overlook. Law dramas are built on performance. Not the actors, the characters. Whether it's a courtroom, a boardroom, or a public hearing, someone is trying to win over an audience. That could be a judge, a jury, a boss, the press, or even just their opponent. It's all persuasion. It's not about who's right. It's about who sounds right at the time. That's why cross-examinations and final speeches feel like action scenes. They are, just verbal ones. And 5, a broken or biased system. If the system were fair, there'd be no story. The stakes would vanish. What makes law dramas powerful is the way they show us a system that's supposed to be just, but isn't. Maybe it's corrupt. Maybe it's outdated. Maybe it's stacked in favor of the rich, or the loud, or the well-connected. The characters aren't just fighting each other. They're fighting the very structure meant to keep things balanced. And that's where all the real tension comes from. Because when the law isn't on your side, how do you still win? Part 3. The stuff you think you need, but don't. Alright, so now we know the 5 essential ingredients. But let's talk about what isn't essential. Because this is where most people get stuck. They copy the packaging instead of understanding the product. Law dramas have been around long enough to collect a bunch of surface level habits. You see them so often, they start to feel mandatory. But if you work from the beginning, you realize a lot of this stuff, it's just tradition dressed up as necessity. Let's clear the clutter. 1. You don't need a courtroom. Seriously, a courtroom is just a symbol, a physical space where the system plays out. But you can tell the legal drama anywhere. A negotiation table at a corporate merger, a press conference with legal implications, a tribal fire circle where elders debate tradition, a back alley where 2 criminals argue over a broken code. Anywhere discussions get made under a set of rules, that's your courtroom. 2. You don't need a lawyer protagonist. Law dramas aren't about lawyers. They're about people navigating systems of power and justice. Your main character could be a defendant fighting for their life, a juror uncovering corruption, a journalist chasing the truth, a whistleblower with everything to lose, a kid watching their parents stand trial. The story's emotional anchor doesn't have to come from legal expertise. Sometimes it's stronger when it doesn't. 3. You don't need suits, gavels, or legalese. These are just props. They're the wardrobe, not the substance. If anything, leaning too hard on the aesthetic can dull the impact. People stop focusing on the conflict and start admiring the costume. And that's not what you want. You want them leaning forward, wondering who's right, and if the system will get it wrong. 4. You don't need a case of the week format. Sure, episodic stories are tried and true, but that's a network TV rhythm, not a storytelling law. You can go serialized, anthology, hybrid. You can focus on a single case across 10 episodes, or never show the insides of a courtroom once. What happens is how the legal and moral pressure evolve over time. Remember, structure should serve the tension, not the other way around. And 5. You don't even need the real-world legal system. One of the biggest mental unlocks? Law dramas can happen in any system where rules exist. Corporate law, artificial intelligence courts, religious dogma, honor codes, fantasy kingdoms, sci-fi empires, underground crime syndicates. If there's a structure and someone has to argue within or against it, congratulations, you've got the bones of a law drama. Remember, don't copy the genre's clichés, copy its purpose. Every time you think, wait, don't I need a, ask, what role does that thing actually serve? If it's about power, keep it. If it's about aesthetic, question it. If it's just tradition, break it. Because the best law dramas don't always follow the format. They interrogate it. They challenge how the law works, who it protects, what people are willing to sacrifice when fairness is just out of reach. Step 4. Reinvention, where this gets fun. So we've stripped law dramas down to their bones. We've tossed out the old furniture. Now the question is, what do you build with the raw materials? Because once you've got the 5 essentials, rules, moral conflicts, a triggering case, a battleground, and a broken system, you can start bending them in new ways. This is where creativity actually kicks in. Forget copying suits or Law and Order beat by beat. Start asking, what else could a law drama look like? And then you'll realize the format is way more flexible than you've been led to believe. Let's mess with the formula. What if the courtroom isn't a courtroom? Maybe your whole legal showdown takes place in a corporate boardroom where 2 factions fight over a hostile takeover. At a public protest where the court of public opinion is the judge. Inside a church where a priest and a parent argue over a child's fate under doctrine. On live television where truth and narrative go head to head in front of millions. Or in a private group chat where a whistleblower risks everything to expose corruption. You don't need oak panels or a jury box. You just need tension, stakes, and opposing force trying to make their case. What if the law isn't written down? Not all rules are laws. Some are cultural. Some are digital. Some are psychological. So your story could explore a social credit system where people are punished by algorithm, and the appeal process is nearly impossible. A ritual trial in a fantasy village where tradition outweighs logic. A military tribunal in space where one wrong call can start a war. A teen drama where a school's internal justice system spirals out of control. If it governs people's lives and they can be punished under it, it's fair game. What if both sides are right? Here's where things get juicy. Let go of hero versus villain. Law dramas thrive in the gray. Build a story where both characters are trying to protect someone, but their definitions of protection clash. One side is enforcing the law, and the other is exposing its flaws. A lawyer defends a guilty client, not because they like them, but because they believe the system still owes them a fair fight. When no one's purely right or wrong, your audience leans in harder. They're not just watching, they're deciding. What if the system isn't corrupt but still fails? Not every law drama needs a mustache-twirling villain rigging the court. Sometimes the heartbreak is in how the system was built correctly and still doesn't serve everyone. The rules were followed, the case was argued well, and yet justice wasn't done. That quiet failure, that's where some of the most powerful law stories live, because it forces your characters and your audience to ask, if the system can't give us justice, then what's the point? Once you stop thinking in terms of courtroom scenes and start thinking in terms of systems, moral dilemmas, and high-stake persuasion, you can build law dramas in any genre, setting, or tone. Want to make a horror legal drama where the town tries to put a demon on trial? A romantic legal drama where a prosecutor and defense attorney fall in love mid-trial? A sci-fi legal thriller where AI file a class action suit against its creator? A fantasy legal saga where nobles rewrite history to claim an ancient throne? All doable. All law dramas. Because the genre isn't defined by location. It's defined by the fight for justice inside a system that might be working against it. And that, done right, will always hit hard.